Hey everyone, Ahmad is here, and today we're going to talk about what's new in Blazor and .NET 8. There's going to be a major upgrade coming in this November. I think it's November 14, and where .NET 8 is going to be released officially for production, and the Blazor will have a very big chunk of those upgrades. So if you check the Microsoft.NET blog, you can see all the details about what has been added. In this video, we're going to cover the biggest three or like 4 features, because actually Blazor has a lot. If you also check out the preview 5, there is also even more, but we will cover the biggest 3. So let's get started. To be able to get started, you're working with the latest Blazor features. Make sure you have the latest version of Visual Studio 2022 preview, I think the version 17.8, and you need the .NET 8 preview 7 installed. So the first one, if you click a new project, and this is, I think, the biggest one, we have a new full Blazor template. It's called the Blazor Web App. Usually we have a WebAssembly or we have a Blazor Server app, 2 templates, but right now we have the third one that's called Blazor Web App. So let's discover it by clicking creating a new project. I'll keep the default name. Let's hit next, and in here, .NET 8 preview, we have a new check called Use Interactive Server Components. Okay, that's something new. Let's give it a check because we will discover this in a bit. Great, so this is the template. It looks like kind of familiar. This models folder is new. We have these pages shared as always, but right now we have the app.razor. It contains a full HTML page. As you can see, it's no longer from here. It has even more. So the full HTML page. Simply this template, you can think of it, you know, when you develop stuff for like traditional web using MVC or Razor pages, traditionally with this template, or like originally, this is an app that runs on the server, renders everything for you on the server, just like when you use Blazor WebAssembly server rendering and send it to the client. It's pure HTML, and then you can just work with that. You can interact WebAssembly and Blazor Server. We'll talk about that in a bit, but originally this is, as I've said, traditional ASP.NET Core web app. You can see here we have nothing strange except this one, add server components. Here we can, of course, add endpoints if you want, or you can use controllers and whatever, unlike the Blazor WebAssembly template. So cool, let's run this project and see how it looks like when we run it. So the first thing you will notice is that there was no loading. Unlike Blazor WebAssembly, which I have a project that's running here on the side of this Visual Studio, so you can see I have this WebAssembly ASP.NET Core hosted running. And if I hit refresh in here, so you see this loading until the Blazor WebAssembly runtime gets downloaded alongside all the other packages to the client, then the app will launch and you can start use it. While this one, everything is being rendered on the server, so whenever you hit refresh or you open the app, it's being rendered and directly sent to you. Here we have this counter. We'll come back to this in a bit. And we have this weather. So this one, as you can see, it's being loaded directly, and then it shows loading and it's opening. So you'll ask here, if this is traditional web, how this is happening? Is there some Ajax or jQuery happening in here? Of course not. This is the first or the other feature that we'll talk about, because the first one is the template. I'm not sure if we can call this a feature, but I think it is. So let's consider it a feature and say the second feature. So what is it? If we go to pages and open the weather, as you have seen, usually in the old web, here I have my website running in here. So like this website has been built using MVC. So if you hit refresh, everything is being loaded, like as you can, except the images. So they are being loaded right now, but the page comes in like rendered fully with all the content and all the calls to the database happen and stuff like that. And I can see it just directly. So that's how it works. But how then, if I want to load part of this page and keep call the server to fetch the rest of the data and show it like partially, some JavaScript is needed in here. But with this upgrade, Blazor contains what's called stream rendering. So for this page, you can think of this page as like any Razor MVC app, as I have said, but you're using the Blazor components model to build it. Right now with this stream rendering, what means is that this page, whenever you request it, it will be sent to the client, whatever it's available at that time, and then it will continue the initialization of the long-running task on the server, and whenever it finishes, it will stream that content back to the client. And then that's why you see the loading, because initially this one is null, and whenever this call is finished, as you can see, they have added this task.delay just for the simulation that they are calling an weather API. So usually it's a long running process, that's how you think of it. And whenever it finishes, this one is not null anymore, so this table is rendered and being streamed to the client. I'm not going to use the word send. So let's understand this even a bit better by running this project and manipulate this a bit. So if I go here to weather, and if we're running this in the normal way by removing this one, and I'll hit this, so what should happen? This component should be fully running and fully initialized, then sent to the client. So if I hit refresh, I will wait for 1, 2, and then I can see everything. There is no loading and stuff like that. That's not good. And I can notice this better if I open it in another tab. You see app is taking time until everything is initialized and opens. Okay, that's not good. But if we use stream rendering, of course, hot reload is getting better and better with every .NET version, which is so great. Right now, if I refresh, you can see the page has been loaded directly to the client, and then it continues running that long running process. And whenever it finished, it's streamed back that to the client, which is so great. This feature is very, very powerful, especially when you are building like apps like e-commerce application where you bring first of all the layout of the product, then you fill the product, then you fill like the comments or the reviews and stuff like that. This is so great. Previously Blazor wasn't so good for those cases because you have only two options, either use Blazor Server or WebAssembly. So they give you that rich client experience, but they have an issue. First of all, Blazor WebAssembly takes some time to load, which is not ideal for cases like e-commerce when you are navigating, loading, like someone send you a link to check this product and you wait for that loading to finish, then the page open. Second, there is no SEO. Blazor Server has its issues, like if the internet connection is not fast and stable, the app will keep disconnected. And the other issue that if the internet connection is not fast, the app will be lagging. So those are two different issues. Right now this is normal web, but with those amazing features, and you're building using Blazor web components. So let's get into the second big feature, or the third, which is bringing WebAssembly and Blazor Server to your project. So let's think of this. I'm building this application, which is actually, I'm going to do that. I've built this app using MVC, my website. Right now I'm turning it into Blazor web app. But I need some sections of the app to be actually interactive. Like I need the comments section here to be running on the client, so I don't have to, like, this is another cool article, and then I had submit because this is normal web. You will go to the server, then the server will respond back sending this page. But no, I want to use here like some client-side capabilities like Blazor Server or WebAssembly. It will be cool if I can combine them together. And Blazor with the .NET 8, you can actually do that. Before we close the app, let's just take one more look. Right now, let me go to the counter page. So this is interesting. If I click here, so I can see that there is an actual update that's happening. So if this is traditional web, then supposedly there is some JavaScript that's updating the DOM. But that's not the case. Here, to get those updates on the client without, like, as you can see, the project is not like reloading every time by sending a request to the server. What's happening is that it's using one of the models, either Blazor Server or WebAssembly. By default, it's using Blazor Server only to run this page. So you can see the magic, like you can bring those sophisticated parts all together inside the same app. This is just something big. Let's see how this works. I will go to the counter component, and as you can see, we have this another cool attribute that's called render mode. So render mode, it says render mode server. So that means it will be using Blazor Server to render this part. Other than that, otherwise, we are not able to get this logic to work, because if we remove it and it's running in the just this page being rendered and sent to the client, then we are not able to increment the counter because you are clicking. This page right now is just an HTML in the browser, nothing happens. This logic is on the server, so it's not going to work unless we add some JavaScript. But if we bring this, hit the hot reload, okay, it's loaded. Let's go to this one, and I will open the inspect element, go to the network tab, network, here we go, and I will go to WebSocket. So this is the WebSocket section, because Blazor Server initialized like a WebSocket between the client and the server. So whenever you click or whenever you do some actions, okay, so you click here and you can see there is a message messages that's being communicated between the client and the server, because whenever you, oh sorry, okay, let me rebuild this project, rerun it. Okay, it looks like cat reload didn't work for this case. Come on. Okay, cool. So let's click, and right now it's working. So let's check the inspect element again and see the messages. So if we go to the network tab, refresh, so we have this connection. Whenever we click, let's open this one, and here are the messages. So I click, and more messages being communicated. So the server is just rendering this part, sending back to the client, and whenever this click happens, and that's how we are having this enrichments, client enrichments, using the Blazor server, because in such cases it is needed. Okay, what if I want to run this part using Blazor WebAssembly and not Blazor server? That's also possible. Let's see how we can do that. There is only two steps that we need to do. First, we need to create a Blazor WebAssembly project, because the Blazor WebAssembly project contains the WebAssembly runtime and stuff like this and that JS. So I'll just call it sample components. Keep the name. Okay, great. So I'm not interested in many stuff here. Let me remove the www root, because it contains some CSS that will conflict in here. Maybe they will resolve this issue later or stuff like that. I'm not sure, but we are still in preview. So, and in the program.cs, we need to remove those that refers to the index.html. Let's just remove them. Cool. Okay, now what we are interested in is we'll create just a component. Call it counter wasm, for example, .razor. Okay, let me go and bring this counter component as it is, and I'll paste it here. Great, no changes, nothing at all. Let's save it, and let's go to this project, back to our Blazor web app. Let's pick this one, hit OK, and right now we need to install a package called Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Components.Blazor.Server. It's a long name, but if you are already a Blazor developer, you are familiar with those names from Microsoft, because they follow their conventions, so you can memorize them on the go. After we install that, if you go to program.cs, add server components, add the ability that you have seen, Blazor server render mode. Right now we need to add the add WebAssembly component, so we can render some components using the WebAssembly capabilities. Okay, that's all what we need to do. Right now, let's go back to the counter. It doesn't contain the counter. We can either say that the whole page we needed to run on the render WebAssembly mode, which is something right now I saw an issue that it's not, if we run it like that, we will see an error, but Microsoft is working on solving that via GitHub issue, so we can just remove it. And we can render the counter wasm component. Let me just remove this long name, I don't like it. And the web space. So check out this magical property. So render mode equals at render mode dot, here you have WebAssembly, server, and auto. We'll talk about this in a second. So this is the very new like Razor directive or property, or whatever you want to call it, attribute, is available here, and it does magical stuff. So you can render only this component, only the part of the UI, using one of your Blazor models that you prefer based on your use case. So let's run this and see what we got. Okay, let's go to the counter and let's increase. So we get an error. What is it? Okay, I think I missed something here. So we should say .add Blazor render mode, .add Blazor WebAssembly render mode. Okay, let's try to run that one more time. We need to make sure that we remove that one. Okay, here we go. So sorry, we missed those that allows this rendering process to happen inside the same page. So if I click here, so right now this one is working. Let me open the inspect element and go to the network tab again. And if we check the WebAssembly here, okay, I need to refresh. You can see that stuff that's being installed, which is the WebAssembly runtime and this stuff. And how we can confirm that, if we refresh again and we quickly click, nothing happens, then it started to count. So why that? Because initially Blazor rendered this page using the Blazor server render mode, WebAssembly server rendering. So we have this page, it's being sent to the client directly. That's why we don't see like a blank page. And then it starts to download the Blazor WebAssembly runtime and all the other packages needed to get this to work on the client. And that's why we have that loading period. But it's just like this when you see that. So this stuff until the app is being ready to run, and it runs that component. But see how powerful it is. You can just run only specifically this part in the Blazor WebAssembly mode from the app, and the rest of the app is running like normal web, and this component can be running in Blazor server, or this one is running normally, and here I have another component that's run using Blazor server WebAssembly. This is extremely powerful. Like if I go to my my application here, right now I can make this actually more powerful. I can add more capabilities here inside this blog, like other features, the comments here. And one more thing I want to see is show you here is actually the admin panel that I actually built from scratch. So I need also to migrate that, because actually right now it's very bad. If I click here, it's just not working as it should be. Like you see, I need to wait. So I do have here my blog, so for example, all the certificates that you see on the website. So if I click in here, I need to edit, so every time it goes to the server. This is just a normal WebAssembly project. This form is not very powerful because of I want to it's just a normal again, but if I use WebAssembly, I can make it much better, take advantage of the OOP model and stuff like that. So but at the same time I can keep it one project. I can keep the blog in here using the components model and use the Blazor server whenever needed, use the Blazor WebAssembly for the rich editors, use the comment section using Blazor server. So think of that, you can build really powerful stuff using this model. I think most of the developers are going to use this as the default one from now on. So before we move on from this topic, if we have seen that there is another option other than Blazor server and WebAssembly. We have auto, and this one is actually another magical thing in Blazor. So if I run the app, so what does auto mean? It's server or WebAssembly, or maybe both. And they are actually both, but let's see how. Well, we have seen in the counter that you need to wait a little bit until everything is initialized to be able to use the capabilities of the WebAssembly, because the runtime to be downloaded, and there is like a little bit of waiting time. Maybe it's big if the internet connection is not fast enough. And when you set it to Blazor WebAssembly Auto, what's going to happen is this smart component, what it will do, it will first check, is there a Blazor WebAssembly runtime installed? No, initially. So it will use the Blazor server. So this component is available for you directly. And while you are using it in the Blazor server, it's actually installing the WebAssembly runtime and stuff like that, and the packages in the background. So whenever you go and you come back to that page, it will check, is there like the WebAssembly stuff cached? Yes, so just use the WebAssembly. So this is something very smart from the team of Microsoft. Special thanks for this great work. And I can really imagine how great right now this framework becomes, because you can take advantage of every little thing to make your app as fast as possible, and of course building it with the Blazor is just enjoyable itself. So the next feature that we want to see, just like this is one of the minors, but I actually like it a lot, which is the sections. This one, if you have developed apps with ASP.NET Core MVC before, you are familiar with this one, that you can declare a section when you want to render it. For example, if I open the main layout, and here let's create a footer or something. So or the nav menu. I think the nav menu is good. Let's go to the nav menu here. We open this component. So here where everything is being rendered inside this nav. So I will add another dev class. Okay, let's just add this as a dev style. We'll give it a padding 10, and I'm going to design stuff like here. So whenever I open a component, as a specific component, I need to render something here in the nav menu. So basically right now in Blazor server or WebAssembly, if you want to do that, you need a way to send this data between from a component back to like a component on a different level. You can use either messaging, or you can use some like a local container that you create and inject, and then you use some notification mechanism between those components. But right now I can go to pages and counter, for example, and in this counter I have two new components, one called section content and one called section outlet. Section content is where you define the content that you want to render, and the outlet is where you want to render. So let's define a content here. You need to give it a name, of course, so it knows which section, because your project you can have a lot of sections. So I'll call it menu section, and here I'll add a content current counter, something like that. Then I will copy the same and I will add that also in the index page. I will define it here, welcome. So one biggest example where to use this is if you are developing a blog and you want the SEO. So the SEO will be different from page to page. So you can define a section here, like you can call it SEO, and here you define your head tags like the card, the title, the stuff like that, that will be understandable by the search engine and the social media sites. And then you can render this section based on the page in the app.razor. But right now we are rendering this in the nav menu. We are not yet rendering that, so let's define the section outlet here, and which section we want to render. Section name, menu, what do we call it? Menu section. Okay, that's it. So here it will be rendered, and here what is the content that will be rendered, and if it's not defined, basically it will not be rendered. So let's run and see what we have. Okay, cool. So right now we don't have anything being rendered. Cool. Why? Okay, it is here, but the color is just weird a little bit. Let's add the style color white. Also here. Okay, for refresh, here we go. It's right now white, and if you go to this page you can see welcome, but if you go to other page it will be disappeared. So right now you can like render some content from a component in any component you want, or in any place in the project based on the component that's being rendered right now. So this is very powerful. As I've said, the biggest example is when you use it for SEO. That's just a little example. You can find many more usages for it, especially in e-commerce when you have like a cart, you want to render something at the header of your project, and many more. So for now, there is much more. Like right now, Blazor has a native data grid. There is overall improvements to the WebAssembly runtime itself being more efficient, and tons of other upgrades, but those are the main one that I want to cover because I got very excited about it, so I would like to share that with you. So I hope you liked it. And before we leave, I just want to mention that right now, if you want to master Blazor WebAssembly, I have released the book Mastering Blazor WebAssembly. This book takes you in a journey from what is Blazor WebAssembly until actually being able to publish a project on the store. And it covers basic topics like components, forms, JavaScript interpolation, and it covers very advanced topics like how to handle errors efficiently, communicate with the API, authentication step by step, and even though the performance of your how to gain performance, a huge performance upgrade in your application by taking advantage of the tiny stuff, and how the components being rendered, and even how Blazor works behind the scenes. So I also have the link in the comment section below, so you can make sure to book your copy. So thank you so much again for watching. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe button to support, and see you in the next video.